In the module called Examples Week 2, you will find a zipped file called Append Prepend Example. This is a NetBeans folder, and if you extract it and look at the code, you will see what I have here on the whiteboard. And the idea is that we are going to collect input from the user. The user will signal the end of the input with 0. We will not put the 0 into our list. And we start out, you can see here, with head and tail set to null. And you remember that head and tail are nodes, and this means that they contain addresses. So this says we're going to create head as a node, but we won't put anything in there, it's set to null, and the same with tail. Then we collect some input from our user. Let's say we get an 11, and as long as it isn't a 0, we go into the while loop, and the first thing we do here is node temp equals new node. So new node is our constructor. We will construct a node and we will put our 11 in it, and the value in next will be null because that's how the constructor works. Node temp equals new node. So we create a node called temp, and you recall that temp contains an address. So temp will have the address where we can find this new node. And when we're writing these things on paper, the easiest way to signal that is to put an arrow. Temp is pointing to this new node. Temp gives us the address of this new node. Then our next piece of code looks to see if head is null. Right now it is. So it's always a special case when we don't have a list. So head is null. So we say head equals temp. So again, an assignment, you look at the value of the right hand side. The value of temp is the address where this new node is. So head equals temp means that head now has the address where this node is. In other words, head is also pointing to this new node. And then this line here says tail equals temp. So tail now has the address where this new node is. So tail is also pointing to this new node. I'm going to skip the else. And now I'm at the bottom of my loop where I collect some more input, and I go to the top of my loop to check if it's equal to 0. Well, let's imagine that it is a 7, so it's not equal to 0. I make a new node. So here is my new node with a 7 in it, and this says temp equals new node. So temp no longer points here. Temp now points to this new node. Okay, if head equals null, well, it isn't. So I'm at the else. Tail.next equals temp. So tails next, this is tail. Tails next is this field here. Tails next equals temp. So tails next, so I put in here, I put the address of, that is the same as temp. Tail.next equals temp. The value of the right hand side is temp. That is the address of this new node. So that becomes the address of the left hand side. So tails next no longer has nothing in it. It has the address, the same address as temp. And then tail equals tail.next. So tail equals tail.next says you take the address that's in tail.next, which is the address of this new node, and you make that the address of tail. In other words, tail no longer points here, but it points to this new node. So I have moved the tail on. I get to the bottom of my loop where I get some more input. Let's say it is 4, and then it takes me to the top of my while loop to check if it's 0, which it isn't. And so I make a new node pointed to by temp, which means that temp no longer points there, and I put my 4 in it. If head equals null, it isn't. So I'm at the else. Tail.next equals temp. Tail is the address of the last node in my list. Tail.next, this is its next. And this is temp. What is temp? Temp is the address of my new node. So tail.next equals temp means in this location here, I put the address of this new node. And then this line here, tail equals tail.next, moves tail on to here. So if I get rid of some of these squiggles here, I can see my status right now. I've got head pointing to the first node, which in turn points to the second node, which then points to the third node, and tail is pointing to this third node. Okay, we get another integer. Let's imagine it is a 0, and I go up to the top of my loop, which is while input is not 0. So I'm done. I'm finished with my while loop, and I have my list built.